皆さんこんにちは。Welcome to 英語ファイル。さあ、今日はですね、英検1級の二次対策の Q&A をやっていこうと思います。で、前回のおさらいなんですけど、前回の動画でスピーチをしました。で、トピックが Are people with a mathematical mindset more successful? 数学的思考を持っている人の方が、成功しやすいかみたいなそういうクエスチョンだったんですけど、それに対して2分間のスピーチをしました。で、自分はアグリーして、で1つ目の理由は論理的思考を養えるから。で論理的に考えられると、自分にとって一番いい回答を常に出せるからですっていうような、理由を言って、であと、林先生とか、具体例に出しましたね。で2つ目の理由が、計算能力が高まるから。そして、現代の社会っていうのは経済で成り立ってるので、やっぱお金の計算とか素早くできるようになると有利ですよねっていう、そういう理由だったんですけど、それに対して、皆さんにクエスチョンを聞いてもらいたくてですね、クエスチョンを募集しましたところ、結構な数が来てるみたいなんですよ。去年もですね、去年だったっけ、前回ね、同じような企画をしたんですけど、YouTube のコメント欄には多分 2,3 人ぐらいの方が投稿してくれたので、ちょっと足りないなって思って、Twitter の方でも募集したんですね。でも今回はどうやらもう20件以上コメントが来てるんで、これだけで結構大変そうなんですよ。だから場合によってはもしかしてこれパート1、パート2になるかもしれませんが、早速やっていこうと思います。まだ見てないので結構ドキドキしています。で多分ね、答えられない問題とかちょっと難しい問題っていうのは絶対あると思うんで、そういう時こそどうやって乗り切ってるかっていうのをね、参考にしていただければいいかなと思います。はい、じゃあ早速いきますね。一応目安としては一つの問題に対して30秒から40秒ぐらい答えることです。じゃあやっていきます。はい。Are you good at math?I suppose I don't consider myself to be a genius when it comes to making mathematical calculations, but I think I do pretty well when I have to just do some basic arithmetic, if I have to add things up when I'm shopping or something and I need to work out how much I'm going to have to pay for the goods that I buy. I suppose I am able to calculate that quite well, so I'm not going to say that I'm good at it, but I'm probably adequate at it. How do you think people can improve mathematical mindset? As with anything, I think in order to improve your skills, you need to spend a certain amount of time practicing it. So even if you're not good at math at the moment, so long as you practice, like every day, let's say like 10 minutes, it can be anything. You could just, use a textbook and answer some very basic math questions, 10 minutes every day, and probably after 1 month, you'll be able to develop you'll be able to develop a mathematical mindset. What do you think that you can enroll in most universities in Japan, even if you don't study math? So, I suppose it's not that much of a problem, even if you can get into a university without having much mathematical ability, because there are some things in life, some jobs in life that don't require mathematical ability. I think especially regarding the difficult stuff that you learn in high school, most people probably don't need that kind of ability later on in their lives. So I don't think that's a problem at all. Do you think the arithmetic talent is intrinsic or extrinsic? Okay, so I think to a certain extent, people are born with an innate ability to think mathematically, but I think we call those kinds of people geniuses. So I think they're an exception. But for most people, I don't think there's much of a difference in terms of natural mathematic ability. It's just a difference. The difference lies in how much time they've spent engaged in mathematics and learning about math, I suppose. why do you think the mathematical mindset helps logical thinking? All right, so I suppose math and logic are they're interconnected. So I don't know, I suppose in order to solve a math problem, there's a specific procedure that you need to take. You need to take one step, and then before you can take the next step, you need to complete that step. And I think that's very similar to logical thinking. It's a step-by-step process. And that's why I believe that having a mathematical mindset, or training yourself to think mathematically and maybe solve problems mathematically in the most efficient way possible, will eventually help with logical thinking. Do you think there is a method that can help improve a person's mathematical mindset? Yep, so as I've already answered, I think the easiest way is probably just to answer lots of questions, get a textbook and answer as many questions as you can every day for as long as you can, for as long as you can stay motivated, and I think that will eventually improve that will help you develop a mathematical mindset. If that's difficult, I suppose you can find a friend who you kind of admire for their mathematical ability and maybe ask them how they were able to think that way, or get them to help you in some way. I think that's probably the best way. What do you think of the idea that mathematically adept people tend to lack empathy and sympathy? Interesting question. Okay, so I kind of can understand why some people might think this, because people who are good at mathematics tend to think about things logically. They believe that there's only maybe one right answer to every question, and they don't like having their emotions get in the way of problem solving. So in that sense, maybe they might be a little insensitive to people's emotions. So yeah, I do kind of understand why some people might believe this. How do you think students can improve their mathematical mindset at school? All right. So firstly, I think students need to become interested in math. So the problem is, even though mathematics is taught all around the world, I think a large proportion of the students do not like math, and the reason is because they find it difficult or boring. So first, I think we need good teachers who are able to show students why mathematics can be very interesting. And once students become interested, I think they'd naturally start engaging in learning about maths and solving mathematical problems, and they'll probably naturally develop a mathematical mindset. You exemplified mathematics as a subject that helps you with developing ability of logical thinking. Do you think that it is the best subject to help students with developing that ability, or else there are alternative ones? Good question. Okay, so yep, as I said, most teachers who teach math at school would say, one of the reasons you are studying math is to develop your logical thinking. But obviously, I don't think it's the best way, because if you want to improve your logical thinking skills, the best thing to do is to solve logical thinking questions or puzzles. Even puzzles might be good. So even though it's not an official school subject, if it's so important to nurture students' ability to think logically, I think maybe we should have a separate subject called logical thinking. Yep. How would you define a mathematical mindset? So that's interesting. How would you define a mathematical mindset? Well, I suppose the obvious definition would be someone who has a habit of thinking about things in a mathematical way. And by mathematical way, I suppose I mean, in a way, it's objective and it's logical, it's a step-by-step process, and it's a very efficient means of thinking as well. So, for example, I suppose, okay, so if you have to catch a train, for instance, okay, so if you have to go to a particular place tomorrow, and you want to figure out what time you need to leave the house, people who think mathematically would be using numbers. They'll be saying, all right, so it's going to take me 10 minutes to get to the station, but I need to prepare before I go out. It's going to take me another 10 minutes. So if I wake up at 6:30, then I'll be in time. So I suppose using numbers when you're making plans. How can math teachers help their students develop the mindset? Yep, so as I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest responsibility for teachers is to make math interesting, because I know there are millions of kids around the world who are completely bored in their classrooms and they don't understand why they have to study math. So yeah, the teacher has to do their best to try and engage the students and make them, and I think the teacher has to be enthusiastic before anything. Because you can't fool students into thinking that you like something, to like something that the teacher actually doesn't like. All right. How did you find mathematics important in your daily life? How did you find mathematics important? How did you find? Or how important do you find mathematics in daily life, maybe? So, well, if we're talking about just basic arithmetic, I think it can be quite important. If you're going shopping, for instance, and you only have a certain amount of money, you want to make sure that you'll have enough money to buy all the stuff that you're putting into your shopping basket. But other than that, I don't think that you need like an advanced knowledge of mathematics, like calculus and things like that. Especially in my daily life, I don't ever feel the need to use use such techniques. So yeah, so I suppose they are important, but only at a very basic level. You mentioned in your speech that mathematics is important in terms of calculations. Nowadays, there are computers and calculators to calculate. So my question is, do you still think that mathematics is necessary? Yep, so probably not as necessary as it used to be, because in the past, people did not have calculators, but then the abacus was invented, and then the calculator was invented. So especially ordinary people, the average person, would probably not need to rely on their mental arithmetic skills, because most people have a smartphone and you have the calculator device in the smartphone. So I don't think, well, I'm not going to say that it's not necessary, but it's probably not as important compared to the past. はい、ということで以上です。皆さん投稿どうもありがとうございました。自分がね、答えてる姿が何らかの参考になったならば幸いです。ということで、皆さんも案内表は届いたでしょうか。自分はですね、土曜日に受けることになっています。なので、土曜日受けた後にまた感想動画をね、アップしようと思います。23日にもね、日曜日に受ける人もいると思うので、もしかしたらその動画が何らかの、参考になればいいかなと思っています。で、本番まで多分もう1個ぐらい動画を上げると思います。でまだ内容を考えてないんですけど、おそらくこの二次試験でも使えるような、例えば表現を紹介するようなものになるかと思います。ぜひ楽しみにしていてください。それでは今日はここまでです。Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next lesson.